Heard a lot in the AFC playoff picture and what to expect there, but let's shift gears because we had a pretty positive week here for the NFC playoffs because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are officially the 4 seed now and are currently matched up with the Philadelphia Eagles here after the Cowboys just beat them. And then we had the unfortunate game where the Vikings scored 3 points, won a game, and it put them ahead of 3 teams that are now 6-7, who all lost this week, who now have the same record as the Falcons and the Saints. And they only scored 3 points. They lost all of their offensive linemen, and they lost Justin Jefferson again. And they're somehow in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I don't see this, like, their next couple of games, they face the Lions twice, they face the Packers, and they face the Bengals. I think it's very possible that they lose out, especially because you lost to the Bears, you scored 10 points, and then you face the Raiders, you scored 3 points. Justin Jefferson banged up again. Like, all 4 of these teams can easily beat you. The Packers game is going to be very interesting, but the Bengals, with how good they've played with Jake Browning, I think you lose that game. The Lions game, you should lose that game. The Packers game, Packers are a better team currently. And then you have the Lions again, where, it's the end of the season, who knows, but they should lose 3 of those 4 games easily.
Yeah, and if you lose 3 of those 4, you probably lose out to the Rams or Seahawks here. So of any of the teams to replace the Vikings, we have the Packers in the fold already. Is the only team you can see going out there competing the Rams right now?
Yeah, I mean, Geno Smith's banged up for the Seahawks. I don't trust them. I definitely don't want the Falcons or the Saints there. I'd rather see the Giants, honestly, if they were to place them. But of those teams, I would definitely take the Rams. Just because you have the experience, you have Sean McVay. Like, we don't want the Vikings there. The Rams, like, LA, all that good stuff. Like, they're going to have some good matchups. They're competitive with all these other teams. They're going to be the most competitive.
Yeah, they're definitely going to be the most competitive, especially if Kyron Williams is healthy. You have a run game with Puka Nacua. You have Cooper Kupp there as well. And then you have Sean McVay, who has the playoff experience. And then Aaron Donald can wreck a game on his own. And you never know when he's going to just turn it up another level, especially once you get a taste for the playoffs, because they would probably get to face off against a team like the Lions here, or it'd probably be the Dallas Cowboys. But I think the Rams are familiar enough with the Cowboys and the Lions where if they catch them on the wrong day, they could definitely make their life miserable. But I feel like a good storyline would be Jared Goff versus Matthew Stafford, Sean McVay, Dan Campbell, that trade kind of coming full circle.
Ooh, I didn't even think of that. And the Lions will probably be locked into that 3 seed most likely. I don't think they'll jump the Cowboys, although maybe.
I don't think so. They play them. If they play them and beat them, they can jump the Cowboys. So yeah, their fate is in their own hands.
Yeah, it's not impossible, but that would be a great matchup. I think they're most likely going to face the Packers. Chances are, if the Vikings fall out, I think the Packers move up there. I think the 3 seed is what to expect for the Lions. So whoever the 6 seed is, whether it be the Vikings, whether it be the Packers or the Rams, I feel like the NFL wants it to be the Rams, though.
Yeah.
You would think, right?
Yeah, the Rams make sense for all of those storylines. Like, you have Matthew Stafford, you have the trade, they trade away Jared Goff, and then for Jared, how satisfying would it be if he can go cook up Sean McVay's team and be like, huh, coach, should have kept me, where you have a game where Matthew Stafford turns out over a lot. But at the same time, the Lions defense hasn't been playing that well. So Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua could very well get off. And I don't think a playoff upset for the Lions right now, I don't think it's something we should completely discard. And I think it's something that is in play. So especially for the Rams, there's so much just ego-wise on Goff and McVay's side relying on that matchup if it happened.
Plus, if he wins that game, it would be the Lions' first playoff win since the 90s, which would be massive for that franchise. And if the Rams win, it's like, well, they probably already won the trade. But if they, if that was an argument, that settles it with that game at that point, with that Super Bowl already there.
Yeah, it would settle it with that game. And then the Lions would have to win a Super Bowl too. And then that would be the extra edge that the Lions would have. But yeah, I think that would be an interesting matchup. And then right now it has the Bucks and Eagles slated as that matchup. And I think the Eagles can really control their own destiny as long as they just win out and beat the teams in front of them. Their schedule is much easier from here. You get the Giants twice, who the Eagles annihilated them last time they played them. And I think with this, you really have to prove to yourself, okay, it was a tough stretch of games, but we do have to get back on the scoreboard in the win column and then win out with these games and then go out there and get a home playoff game. Because if we start to lose these games towards the end of the season, how much momentum are we losing getting into the playoffs? How are we going to get ourselves revved up for that game where a team like Tampa is going to be hyped out of their minds for that game in Tampa? The cannons are going to be going off there. Like, you're honestly, if you end up falling to the wild card and you don't win out, you're setting yourself up for first round failure.
Yeah, especially with the Bucks team that has already been there already. Todd Bowles was still in that organization when they won the Super Bowl. And then you have a lot of those guys on the defense that have already been there, who've already won the title. And Baker Mayfield's one of those guys who, sure, he might not be the one of these stars that we're going to talk about with, you know, whoever it might be, Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, whoever, but he's still a competitor. He's still a gamer, and he has won a playoff game. He beat the Steelers convincingly too. So I think that he's a guy who is definitely capable of a playoff upset, especially in the way this season has played out. Like, this is definitely not off the table.
Yeah, because say that the Giants beat the Eagles in one of those games, but the Cowboys also lose and the Eagles kind of just fall into that wild card spot. And then you're putting yourself in danger of just meandering into the playoffs, where I feel like there could actually be real problems with the offensive coordination right now and defense. Just not necessarily their fault, but you're stepping in for some pretty big shoes. Two guys who are both pretty decent head coaches right now. Shane Steichen definitely a lot better to this point with the Colts. And then you have that as kind of a lapse where the Bucks have more consistency with Todd Bowles. That team's been there and done it before. And if you're just kind of coming into the playoffs where Jalen Hurts is hurt right now and he's not running to get yards like he was in the Super Bowl era, because him running last season was dynamic. And I feel like this season he's been banged up. He looks like he's protecting himself. So if you have a limited Jalen Hurts and you can't run the ball now with D Swift and your run game has fallen off to a point and Dallas Goedert is banged up now, I don't think a Bucks upset is out of the play at all if you fall down to that seed.
Now, let's say hypothetically it's not the Bucks who make it. Let's say it's the Saints or Falcons. Does that change the narrative for you?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
They haven't been there and they haven't done it before, where the Eagles have. So they're going to beat those teams based off of experience when it comes down to it and is close. So you're not winning a game with Derek Carr. You're not winning a game with Desmond Ridder. Baker Mayfield, he's won a playoff game. He's upset the Pittsburgh Steelers before. That was the Cleveland Browns' first playoff win in how long?
Oh my God,
like
the 90s.
Like since the 90s. So he's like, hey, I was that dude in Cleveland. I bounced around the league, but we all know how bad the situation in Carolina is now. So I can actually make something. And then Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and then just the defense on Tampa, I feel like is more dangerous than New Orleans or Atlanta.
Yeah. And then also, like, a lot of the, like, yes, there's still some Saints players in those playoff runs that they had, like Cam Jordan and Marshawn Lattimore, but like, that offense, it would be a crime to see the Falcons or the Saints in that playoff game against the Eagles, because the Eagles would destroy them at the end. It would be like 30-10 most likely. Where the Bucks, they can play some upset ball. They're a gritty team. They have grit. Like, I think they could win that game.
Yeah, they definitely could win that game, and I think the Cowboys still are very much in play to fall down to that spot, especially they play the Bills and they play the Dolphins. Maybe they lose one of those games, but the Cowboys, if they win, they're entering the playoffs on an absolute tear. And I feel like they have the most momentum of any team besides San Francisco, but San Francisco is equally on fire right now. And I feel like at this point, they just have more firepower. Like, it's not even fair, like with McCaffrey.
Oh, yeah.
Like, with how much more firepower the San Francisco 49ers have. So do you see the Cowboys coming in on fire and winning out? Or do you think they stumble into the wild card spot?
I think the Cowboys are going to win the division, honestly, because of the fact that they have Dak Prescott playing his best, not turning the ball over. Their defense has been world beaters to this point, and the Eagles look tired. They look banged up. the Cowboys have had their injuries, but at the same time, like Dak Prescott looks like he's in rhythm. CeeDee Lamb's playing the best football he's played as a pro, and Brandon Cooks is getting involved. Jake Ferguson's coming alive. Tony Pollard's getting it done. Like this Cowboys team, it seems like they're riding their high right now. Whereas the Eagles, it looks like they're tampering down a little bit.
Yeah, it does look like they're tampering down. It looks like they're injured. It looks like they're realizing how taxing it is to make it to a Super Bowl back-to-back years. But I could see them getting healthy and kicking it into another gear because you can't just still win the games in front of you and win your division. Very likely so. So I think with that, I think the Eagles still should win the division, but I feel like the Cowboys feel like they have more momentum right now.
Yeah, and I think that I feel more comfortable with the Cowboys win against the Bucs than the Eagles currently.
Yeah, and an easy schedule isn't necessarily a bad thing because then you're not getting beat to hell through the whole regular season. Then you have time to get comfortable, you get confident, and then once you feel confident, you can stomp out really good teams. That's when it comes back. And I think the Cowboys are still like Micah Parsons was still dumb enough to believe he's like, oh, I don't think if we remet with the 49ers like tomorrow it'd be the same result. So if he still has like that's good blind faith almost for Micah Parsons. So he was like, hey, I think it'd be different. So they still have the mindset that it could be different. So maybe they do have the momentum, but I still think it's San Francisco.
I would hope it's different. That game was ugly, and that got ugly really quick. I think it would be different. Whether they win or not, though, that they need to prove that for me because they haven't beaten the 49ers in the past.
Yeah, and I think right now, I think San Francisco is just ahead of the pack. I really do think it is their year this time.